New York has just elected a communist lunatic, according to Donald Trump.
We speak to the pollster who's going to give us the inside scoop on exactly how Mamdani did it.
The Democratic turnout was astronomical last night across the country. You have to remember this. Andrew Cuomo received more votes than Eric Adams when Eric Adams won by nearly 70% of the vote, and he lost with that many votes. Democrats are very active right now. They're very energized to vote against Trump. They're voting in presidential levels, and Republicans aren't there, and independents are certainly not there. So I think that it does matter quite a bit. And I think, Donald Trump should make a show of force and say, I'm not backing down from my policies, and he should do ICE raids, immigration raids during the inauguration.
Tim, you're looking suited and booted, but you haven't shaved, and you have the air of a man that's been up all night.
I'm an insomniac, and last night there was an election in New York, so who could sleep through that? It's the city that never sleeps, and my little bit of Kent became the village that can't sleep. And so I did indeed watch the results. This is a big moment in American history. I think the election of Zohran Mamdani has been seen in Europe through the prism of the fact that he is a Muslim and that he was very critical of Israel during the Gaza war. And that was very important, especially during the primary. So Americans, as you know, first select their party's candidates in the primary system, where he faced off against Andrew Cuomo. And then they run in the general. And in the general, he was up against Andrew Cuomo running as an independent, and also a very amusing Republican guy who wore a beret and just shouted at everyone, who got a very small percentage. But actually, although the Islamic anti-Israel stuff mattered in the primary, in the general, the really striking thing is that New York has elected a socialist as mayor, someone who is endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America. Socialism has not really mattered in American politics since about the 1910s and 1920s. Back then, it was a significant third-party force. It lost ground, in part because the U.S. state simply crushed it.
Yes, as they do.
Put its presidential candidate in prison, Eugene Debs, who was name-checked by Mamdani in his speech.
Capitalism, innit?
Yeah. But it looks like socialism's coming back, and it's coming back in New York.
Socialism, it's the new black. Oh, how annoying.
On a massive, historic turnout, one of the biggest they've seen in a very long time. He won with just over 50% of the vote.
For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater.
Even if Cuomo had managed to get the Republican to drop out and endorse him, they still wouldn't have had enough votes to beat him. So a historic victory.
I was sort of looking up his profile, didn't know that much about him, was thinking to myself, well, is this New York's answer to, I don't know, Zara Sultana, Zach Polanski, the Green leader? I mean, where's the equivalent here? He obviously does have an immigrant background. He came to the US when he was age 7. And then you see his childhood, and it's actually quite privileged, quite gilded. His father's an academic at Columbia University.
Cuomo liked to point out that this is a socialist who lives in rent-controlled accommodation, whose parents are privileged and who has never had a proper job in his entire life.
No.
And it's tempting to say that is now the profile of the left.
Well, he attended a $60,000 a year private school.
Right.
So
owns a parcel of land in Uganda.
Handy.
Yeah.
So there's a degree of champagne to his socialism.
Oh,
I would say
definitely.
there is a fizz in his communism.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Donald Trump just has totally taken the gloves off, described him as a communist lunatic, and did this thing as people were going to the polls, Tim. What did you think when the US president wrote on Truth Social that if you were a Jewish person living in New York and you voted for Mamdani, you were, quote, stupid?
Yeah.
I can understand the premise of that. I'm not sure Jewish voters want to be told either how to vote or indeed that they're stupid for not voting for the Republican candidate. I appreciate the sentiment of it. I'm not sure whether that was a help or a hindrance, actually.
I think you had to bear two other things in mind. One is that demographically New York has changed. The Muslim population is reckoned to be around 9%. The Jewish population is around 11, 12%. So it's coming up to even right now. So is it really a shock that a city where nearly 1 in 10 people are Muslim might elect a Muslim. It's not
Yeah.
that big a deal. And the second thing is that within the left in America, a lot of Jewish voters are critical of Israel.
Yes.
So the idea that you could just play that card like Cuomo tried throughout the primaries and it would work, it didn't work. Zohran is the liberal Trump in this sense that he proves that people are looking for clarity and that if you stick to your principles, people will vote for you because they think it's authentic. Whereas people like Cuomo, who are all over the place and are
Yes.
just bidding for your vote, that looks inauthentic.
And opportunist,
But he's
actually.
he's also Trump-like in the way that in 2016, every effort to paint Trump as a crazy racist somehow helped him. It somehow solidified the base of his support. Likewise, all the attacks on Mamdani just bounced off. And you compared him to Polanski and perhaps Corbyn in this country. Why is he different? And we'll discuss the significance of this for Britain later. Why is he different? He's intelligent.
Yes.
And he's charming. And he's quite good looking. He's
Yes.
only 34. And he is just one of the best political operators I've ever seen, with an incredible discipline when it comes to message and just oodles of charm.
And a single message. I will make life in the Big Apple more affordable for you.
Yes.
And let's look at some of the policies here, Tim. I mean, they are... they're punchy.
Yeah.
A rent freeze on rent-stabilised units. He wants to tax corporations and increase taxes on the city's wealthiest residents. That's those earning above $1 million annually. There's talk of a 2% tax on the very wealthiest New Yorkers. He's talking about cracking down on bad landlords and ending deed theft. That's what he describes it as. He's talking about combating unaffordable grocery prices by taking... I mean, what?
By running city-owned stores.
I mean, that's crazy. And I mean,
It's
you're going to
shades of the
control
USSR, right?
Very much so. Fare-free buses. Well, good luck affording that. He wants to raise the minimum wage to $30 an hour.
Which is about like £22,
Wow.
£23.
By 2030. He wants universal childcare for all, so children aged 6 weeks to 5 years old.
Yes.
Again, doesn't sound like that's particularly affordable.
I'm surprised a rainbow on every street corner and
Well,
unicorns and lollipops aren't
I
in
know,
there too.
the planting of magic money trees.
It reminds me of the conversation we had with Alistair Heath, the Sunday Telegraph editor, about the different forms of socialism. There's one, the French one, where you just tax everyone. And then there's the other one, which is this fantasy that
Yes.
there's just these rich people, and if you just squeeze them really hard, you can pay for everything. And of course, one reason why this won't work in New York is because New York is partly a financial center. It depends on how attractive it is to
Yes.
rich people to live there.
Yes.
And if it becomes somewhere where it looks like if you're rich, you're going to cross the boundary and get held up by the mayor and shaken down, then surely there's going to be a flight.
I am foreseeing an opportunity here for us Brits.
Yeah.
Because we've had this mass millionaires exodus.
Yeah.
Okay, but there are two types of different millionaires now trying to flee the US.
Yes.
Some of them are anti-Trump. They can't bear him, so they're seeking sanctuary in the UK anyway. We've now got people fleeing Mamdani, potentially buying up the mansions that the millionaires who have left the UK have left behind.
Yeah.
There could be an unintended consequence of all this. Also, perhaps it does embolden the City of London. Where is our main competition these days post-Brexit? It's not Frankfurt, it's not Paris, it's not Milan, Rome, wherever. It's always been New York City. We've done an analysis on the Telegraph website, which you can read, which is basically saying, somebody's quoted saying, there is a Venn diagram of people that voted for Trump, people that have voted for Mamdani. There is a crossover, and all of them have been convinced by both very able politicians that they will be better off if they go in the direction of that particular candidate. I mean, let's be honest, life in New York has become unaffordable for a great many people. Same situation. We were discussing this week, generational unfairness.
Yeah.
You're a young person in New York, you've got no hope in hell of owning a brownstone.
Yes.
You know, rents are sky high. The price of food has gone up exponentially over the last few decades.
But also, if you're young and you're living in New York, you're probably not a textile worker.
No.
This is not the left of the 1930s.
No.
You're probably someone who works for a TV company or a fashion company. You're probably white collar, well educated. So as well as wanting the rent to be lowered, you're also really woke.
Yes.
And to some extent, I think this is the woke generation coming of age and entering politics. Mamdani is woke, okay? He might. This is a misunderstanding that lots of people have. They think Muslim left wing. How does that work? Well, actually, you know what? A lot of Muslims are secular and really woke, and he's an example of that.
No, I know there is the assumption that they might be a bit more socially conservative. But hang on a minute, we had Piers Morgan in this studio 5 minutes ago, telling us that woke was dead.
Woke as a cultural phenomenon is dead, but in the same way that the people who opposed Vietnam and were crazy left wing in the 60s grew up, put on ties, and entered politics and became Bill Clinton. That same generation of people in their 20s who, say, 10 years ago were woke and crazy and left-wing and were chaining themselves to things on campuses and gluing themselves to the road, they've grown up, they've put on a tie, and they've entered politics.
But it is the cult of the personality, as you say. I mean, can lessons be learned by the Corbyn, Sultanas and Polanskis of this world, of our world, of UK domestic politics? As you say, they've got to have a huge amount of panache to pull this off. I mean, there's the stark sort of social media depiction of Mamdani. He goes out with a kind of big sign saying, do you want to discuss New York politics? Do you want to discuss it with me? Do you want to discuss socialism? And like nobody comes up to him. Fast forward to the end of the campaign and he's being mobbed by screaming crowds. I mean, there was echoes of, Jeremy Corbyn in the way that he was being received in recent days.
Echoes of Charlie Kirk, too.
Wow, yeah.
That same young, I'm up for a debate, I want to discuss ideas. It's not just about tedious procedures and practicalities. There's a bit of that there as well, I think.
So it's a candidate with some chutzpah, willing to make the arguments and making them in a way that is eminently clickable. He's won the social media war here. This is the other thing with Cuomo.
Yeah.
Are we now in an era where the digital candidate wins against the analog candidate?
Yes, definitely.
Because of the way communications have changed. And of course, we witnessed that with Trump tapping up Joe Rogan and such like on the advice of his son Barron.
And style has changed. Again, as I say, it's about sticking to your guns, and people admire that because they think if you're unbending, like Farage, if you've basically said the same thing for 30 years, that must mean you're authentic. And eventually your ideas come around. If you just stick to socialism, a point will come where there's a crisis in capitalism and you look electable. Part of the problem with this country is our politicians are just so low talent. American politicians are so much better than this. You know, as they say, politics is Hollywood for ugly people. And as a friend of mine who's on the far left and supports Mamdani and supports the Greens has just said, why is there no one like this in Britain on the left? Zara Sultana does not come close to this.
No.
She's just a squawking student protester. It just sounds like I'm carrying a torch for the guy, but Mamdani was just really charming. I don't think Polanski comes near that. I don't think he's got that star quality. And also he hasn't got the teeth.
No.
Polanski's teeth are too British. He's got British teeth.
Can I just say,
He
Americans
can't
do
compete.
have great teeth.
They do.
Can I tell you something very quickly? When I was working in America on the royal weddings, I said to the head of talent at NBC, you'll be pleased to know that I'm going to just get a brace because I just want to sort out those. She goes, yeah, you need to get the whole top row sorted out. I was like, I was talking about my bottom teeth. So bad. Right. Shall we speak to somebody who knows more about this than we do? And that is Ryan Gurdisky, who is a political consultant and commentator based in NYC.
Ryan, thank you very much for joining us. You are a polling guru. Tell us, how did Zohran Mamdani, a socialist, get elected in New York?
Well, it's very interesting. So in the primary election, right, they had something called ranked choice voting, which is basically you could only go to the top two. So people would say, I want to vote for this person first, and this person second, and this person third. Mamdani built a coalition specifically among young people, college-educated whites, Asians, Muslims, and he was facing the former governor who was disgraced, Andrew Cuomo, who was primarily being backed by establishment Democrat voters, mainly Hispanics, working-class whites, and blacks. And Cuomo really did not believe he ever had a stiff competition. He didn't have an oppo file despite having a lot to work with against Mamdani. He didn't really even go on the attack until the last week or two of the campaign, despite Mamdani climbing in the polls. And if you look at Cuomo's long legacy, he never had a competitive primary in New York. He was the attorney general nominee. We had a primary then against a local New York City politician. He was handed the governorship. He never had a competition in the primary or the general. So I guess the whole notion that he was this tough candidate who could win very easily was really overstated because he's never actually campaigned. The interesting thing about the general election is that Mamdani would have lost had it not been for the fact that establishment establishment Democrat voters that back Cuomo in the primary, back Mamdani in the general. Mamdani won Hispanic and Black voters and lost East Asians that overwhelmingly backed him in the primary. And he lost a lot of wealthier or college-educated parts of Manhattan that were big-time supporters in the primary. So it's very interesting how that switch happened.
Okay, so to get this right, in the primary, Mamdani was building a new kind of coalition. But you're saying that in the general election, actually some of those voters switched to his opponent, and he actually won on a more traditional Democratic coalition.
Well, I don't know if those individual voters switched, but that demographic switched, right? The overall trend. Now, that may have been because people sat out the first time of that demographic, and they thought that everyone believed Andrew Cuomo had this in the bag. There was no one. I mean, I talked people out of running for mayor because I thought there's no way to beat Andrew Cuomo. And so those groups of people that were, there are certain neighborhoods that attract younger people, college-educated people, people who work in in the finance business. They overwhelmingly in those neighborhoods voted for Mamdani the first time. I voted for Cuomo the second time. Likewise, working-class Black neighborhoods in Queens and Brooklyn and Hispanic areas in the Bronx. Remember, the Bronx was Cuomo's best county, overwhelmingly voted for Mamdani. And they did not stick with Cuomo despite him still being on the ballot. They went and they are Democrats. They voted the Democrat line, point blank.
Ryan, is New York an outlier? I mean, this result is quite surprising in light of Trump's re-election, in light of a lot of rhetoric around woke being dead, that actually socialism isn't quite as popular as it used to be. But of course, there are demographic factors involved in the Big Apple, right? I mean, my understanding is that Mamdani massively appealed to cross-generational voters because he basically said, life in the city is becoming too expensive. It's $15 for a pastrami sandwich. We can't carry on like this. And I guess that is a good appeal to the electorate, isn't it? I'm going to make buses free. I'm going to help you with childcare. I'm going to implement rent controls on the back of the rich.
Right. And I mean, the main thing was freezing the rent. The rents in New York are the most expensive in the country. There are apartments where you can get, and it's very common on Instagram and TikTok. You'll see videos of literal closets that go for $2,000 or $3,000 a month. I mean, you can barely fit a bed in it, and it is astronomically high, and it is unmanageably high for a lot of working class people. And I think that the thing that Mamdani did very successful, which is what Bernie Sanders did that was very successful, which is what Donald Trump did that was very successful, was he had a slogan that was tangible, that was easy to understand, and that you could understand how it affects you in your life. Freeze the rent, Medicare for all, build the wall. These are tangible slogans that the average voter can very much understand. Cuomo was basically saying, I will manage the decline of New York very well. There was no idea that he was going to reverse trend lines in New York to make them more manageable. Now, a lot of things that Mamdani has campaigned on, he cannot do without support from the state legislature, from the governor, and there's probably only limited support even there. And it's very expensive, to have free childcare, very expensive to have a lot of these things, free busing that he has promised, government-run grocery stores. But we will see if the legislature goes along with it, and certainly if the legislature is willing to help pay for it, because New York City probably cannot pay for half these things on their own.
Do you think in the end that it was significant that he is Muslim and critical of Israel, or was it actually irrelevant?
I think it was significant for Muslim voters, right? Mm-hmm. There's definitely pockets of New York City where you see huge spikes of support for Mamdani in areas, and those are Muslim voters. And there's quite a number of Muslim voters. Critical of Israel helped in the Democratic primary for sure. I think a lot is being made of it, though. I think that, only in New York would they ask a mayoral candidate, what foreign country are you visiting? They don't ask the mayor of Omaha, Nebraska, what foreign country are you visiting? It's a very weird dynamic that they ask the mayor of New York foreign policy questions. And Mamdani spoke to the Democratic primary, but mostly the white college-educated activist portion of the Democratic primary. I think that there is, there's definitely flavors of anti-Semitism that run through him that definitely drove Jewish voters to the polls against him. There's definitely things about him that are genuinely, I mean, a little past socialism, like communism, when he says seize the means of production, which he's actually said out loud, that drove people on the Upper East Side to vote against him. I think that the man is not the moderate that he pretended to be throughout the entire general election. When you saw him on his victory speech, it was very much, his victory speech was the equivalent of if Trump had won in 2016 and said about Obama, I still think he was born in Africa. Like that was basically his speech was, guys, guess what? This whole shiny, happy person I did for the last 6 months, it's been a lie. I am what they said I am. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see what goes on. But as far as the Israel thing, I think it was the Democratic primary. In the general, it was probably more hurtful to him than helpful because I don't think people care about foreign policy when they're voting for mayor.
He was running as a Democrat, but of course he is a democratic socialist. And that actually ties him to a particular organization, right? So as the mayor, is he answerable to the democratic socialist lobby as much, if not more, than the Democratic Party? In other words, I don't want to imply there's some shady lobby behind him, but have we actually seen a proper democratic socialist elected here? Not just a very left-wing Democrat.
Right. So in New York State, there's a very strange rule that's not true of most of the United States. There's something called fusion voting, right? So you could run for office under multiple party lines at the same exact time. You could technically run as a Republican and Democrat, and it's been done before, actually, quite a number of times. There's a group called the Working Family Party in New York, which is a very far left, quasi-socialist, while not saying they're socialist, party in New York State, and they were big backers of Bill de Blasio when he ran for mayor. When Bill de Blasio was in the city council, he was notoriously, I worked in the city council then, he was notoriously lazy. And basically the Working Family Party wrote all of his legislation. They told him how to vote and he did it. And when he became mayor, the Working Family Party ran New York City for the full 8 years that he was mayor. Will the DSA do the same thing? I don't know. I mean, it's possible. But if he did, it's not like it's unprecedented because Bill de Blasio had basically the same coalition working with the Working Family Party.
The DSA is, of course, the Democratic Socialists of America, the very left-wing umbrella organization for the left.
Ryan, Donald Trump has been as critical of Mamdani as he has our own Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. He's called him a communist lunatic. He urged on Truth Social Jewish voters not to vote for him, saying they would be stupid to do so. Does this overall have an effect on the US president with the midterms fast approaching?
This election, I mean, the election last night has an effect for sure. I mean, the Democratic turnout was astronomical last night across the country. You have to remember this. Andrew Cuomo received more votes than Eric Adams when Eric Adams won by nearly 70% of the vote, and he lost with that many votes. The Republican running in New Jersey got 125,000 more votes than he got 4 years ago and lost. Democrats are very active right now. They're very energized to vote against Trump. They're voting in presidential levels, and Republicans aren't there, and independents are certainly not there. So I think that it does matter quite a bit. And I think, Donald Trump should make a show of force and say, I'm not backing down from my policies. And he should do ICE raids, immigration raids during the inauguration, Mamdani's inauguration.
Are we seeing in Mamdani the future of the party, if not him, someone like him being nominated for president? And if so...
Well, he can't be nominated for president.
He can't be, yeah. But... does this embolden the Sanders wing of the Democratic Party, that they're more likely to nominate a quote-unquote economic populist next time rather than go with a centrist droog?
Well, the thing about remember what I said about the coalitions in New York City primary? Black voters overwhelmingly supported Cuomo, but they were Democrats. They voted for the Democrat no matter what. In New York, in the United States of America, South Carolina is the most important first primary. It's a majority Black primary. They would probably not support a socialist, right? The Deep South that got Bill Clinton and Joe Biden and Barack Obama their nominations would probably not support a socialist. They're Black, they're establishment, they're very moderate voters. That being said, it is really a question of when, not if. When will a socialist be able to break through? And it is a big question. I think when the Democrats announce their list of states that they're going to hold primaries in 2027 or 2028, the very beginning of it, If they announce a white or Hispanic majority Democrat coalition state in Nevada, Iowa, New Hampshire first, it means they're open to having a socialist nominee. If it's South Carolina and Georgia and Florida, it means they're likely against having a Democrat socialist nominee.
Ryan Gurdisky, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Tea.
Thank you. And I can just mention my podcast. It's called
Yes,
the Numbers
please.
Game Podcast with Ryan Gurdusky. And I do data every single day. A new episode will come out on Thursday tomorrow, all about the election. So please check it out. I do Europe, UK elections once in a while. Tim, I want you on.
All right, cool. We can do a little talent exchange here. Thank you very much,
Exactly.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying our journalism, why not sign up to From the Editor, our free email newsletter? Start your day with the latest news and opinion, plus our bite-sized puzzles. Scan the QR code to sign up free today.